You know how I put a segment out the other day about how the economy is dying? Did you know the economy is actually more dead than you thought it was? The job growth has been revised down again. 911,000.
This world. We are getting those payrolls revisions. Let's go to Steve Leisman, who's been looking into that. Steve, what do you see?
New numbers coming in. It turns out that our economy is actually 5 people. There are 5 people in San Francisco who are all shuffling offices working on startups, and that's actually our entire economy. Everyone else is unemployed.
The biggest revision we've had, I go back 25 years here. This may be the biggest revision ever, Sarah. We minus 911,000 payroll growth from April of 2024 through March of 2025 is 911,000 less than previously reported. What has happened now to the month over month, or the
stock market doesn't care, because again, the stock market is all fairy tale numbers. The stock market is all magical. It has nothing to do with anything.
Monthly growth rate has gone from what we thought was 140.
Scott Bessent interview after jobs report. No. You don't understand. This was the Scott Bessent interview where he was downplaying how bad the jobs report is. This is the payroll revision. This is from 2 days ago. The payroll revision is from 5 hours ago. Okay? This is a lot worse. This is significantly worse. This is a new bad bit of data.
7,000 a month to now just 70,000 a month. So 1.7 million jobs is now 847,000 jobs created over that period. So over that time period,
let me hear that again.
To now just 70,000 a month. So 1.7 million jobs is now 847,000 jobs created.
1.7 million jobs gained, all the way down to 800,000.
Over that period. So over that time period, payrolls were quite a bit weaker. Remember, this is the period ending 5 months ago. This is the annual benchmark revisions that's done every year. This is a preliminary number. Over time, it tends to actually be revised a little bit higher. The revision to the revision ends up being a little bit higher, but right now it's suggesting much weaker payroll growth. I will point out that this is definitely toward the high side of what I've seen from Wall Street analysts. And now you have to plug in you have to start thinking about.
Levitt spoke on it earlier, blaming the Biden economy. That it is possible. This revision does go back to what, April of last year. So this does also include like a portion of Biden's presidency. I think it's probably reasonable to assume that it's mostly Trump, but you could probably assume that this is a downward revision encompassing a portion of Biden's presidency as well.
What does this say about today? In other words, this data is 5 months old. We won't know until the final revisions in February which month each of the weakness belongs to, but we do know a bit about which industries it belongs to. And we have a chart here, 880,000 from the private sector. The biggest revision came from trade, transportation, and utilities of 226,000, 126,000 off in retail, leisure and hospitality down 176,000, professional business services down 158,000. So widespread in the, I don't see it here. Not a lot in private education and health services, which was the big. You can see the recent revisions there. The second biggest revision that I have, Sarah, in my records is 2009 in the wake of the great financial crisis. And what had happened in that situation was some of the modeling.
Guys, I got some bad news for you. Now is not the time to quit that shit-ass job with the manager who keeps making passes at you, okay? I've got really bad news, and I'm really sorry to tell you this, but now is not the time to quit that job.
Was wrong. Some of the birth, death of businesses was wrong. This may be the case right now. We might have come into this year with much more weakness than we thought we had in the job market. It was okay. It seemed to be like the unemployment rate.
Yeah, it's even larger than the negative revision after 2009 or over 2009. That is crazy.
It remained relatively stable. So whatever we were doing was okay to keep the unemployment rate, a separate survey, relatively low, but we were not creating as many jobs as we thought. And I know that some Fed officials, Chris Waller among them, think this is part of a broader story.
I wonder if anyone who watches CNBC regularly, like as a avid, interested in business, I wonder if they ever reflect on the fact that like really bad economic data plays over the stock market doing well. Like if that disconnect ever means anything to them.
Weakness in the job market that should cause the Federal Reserve to cut. And we'll see what happens now to the, I don't know if we're able to get you right away an update on Fed funds futures, but certainly the market was primed for 325 basis point cuts this year.
This pretty much does it though, right? It's pretty much guaranteed now that the Fed cuts rates. They've been hovering, they've been estimating that for a while, but when the rate cut comes, like they have to do it now. There's no way. With the numbers going down like this, like they've got a red button they need to hit. And it won't even help. It might help like marginally. It might help a little bit.
And we'll see if I could take a look right now to see if there's any more play on a 50. And there isn't, and there probably shouldn't be.
So wait, Trump tried to take control of the agency to report on good numbers, and they still revised even worse numbers. It's not that simple. This isn't the jobs data that Trump was previously commenting on. This is the payroll revision, where they use more precise information to do final revisions. Keep in mind, like there's no perfect way of tracking who has a job in this economy, right? Like there's no way the government can like get a perfect, accurate one-by-one count. They have a wide variety of methods that they use to do estimates, and these payroll revisions, which of course like people file their W-2s or whatever, the government gets that information, it gets pulled from the IRS, and they use that as a general estimate to revise how many people must have actually had jobs. They have like a bunch of ways of doing this. But this data has been cooking for a while. So this isn't like something that Trump could have reasonably affected, unless what they did was they just blocked this data from coming out. And I have to tell you, if Trump put a new guy at the head of the BLS and then they blocked payroll revision data, there would probably be like bombs going off on Wall Street. If they blocked the release of that data, people would be like the hedge fund managers would be like boarding up their office doors and pulling the guns out of their desk cabinets. You know, it would that would be historic.
So that this will motivate Fed officials to do more, but it will motivate them to do something.
Right.
Yes, the market would still go up.
Two takeaways, Steve. Number one, this sort of ratifies the idea that they should cut next week, and that job growth has stalled and has slowed and looks even worse than they originally expected. And the last few months have been weaker. And then the second is my question about the process. So how were we almost 1 million jobs short in terms of, you know, there have been questions lately about how this process, this data, the president raised it, he fired the BLS chief. Does this feed into those concerns about how the data was so off?
I think it should, and I'll tell you why, Sarah, because when I look at the history of these as a percentage of payrolls,
I really don't think that a rate cut would even affect the unemployment rate this much, because as we've seen, the problem is that nowadays so much of the money circulating in our economy is outside of the real economy. Why would businesses increase how many people they hire when it's just more profitable, especially with a lowered Fed rate, to engage in the constant like speculation and borrow scheme? Like what would, like, okay, so you're a struggling business, right? You're not making much money, you're laying people off, the government lowers rates, so now you can borrow money basically for free and you can invest it and everything's going up. Why would you hire more people? Like, why would you, the money you're making is in the speculation. Why would you waste money in the relatively unprofitable sector of hiring people and selling goods and services? What's the purpose, you know? It's the tariffs. If we got rid of those, we'd have growth again. To an extent, but there is a broader issue here, right? Like, we're still in a bubble that's being caused by the accumulation of wealth in this speculative economy. Like, even if we got rid of the tariffs, it doesn't change the fact that more and more people are underemployed, that more and more people are being shifted from full-time work to part-time work, that more and more people are, you know, like they're not, even if the jobs are out there, it's like gig economy bullshit, right? We're still dealing with the problem, like fundamentally, that it is getting less and less profitable to just run a business. The business part of the business isn't even what's making money anymore.
Actually, they do a pretty good job when you look at the revisions as a percent, 0.1, 0.2.
They need to bite the bullet and raise rates, don't they? Ooh. If they did, there would be like a wave of suicides in Wall Street. If they did a rate raise, okay, in the long run, I think that would actually help, because the goal would be, hey, listen, you make your money off of the business. Make your money by selling goods and services, which leads to money actually circulating in the civilian economy, right? Like, if you're a business, you should be making your money doing the business, not off of speculation. So in the long run, maybe that would be better. But in the short run, it would be spicy.
It's averaged about 0.3. This is 0.6. This is double the average. So, and let me just see if I can find out the last couple of years. Yeah, I said it was 0.4 in 2024. So the last couple of years have been quite a bit above average in terms of the amount of revision. What's happening here is we're getting jobless.
You know why that is? I bet you it's because of the increase of gig economy bullshit. As more people do part-time work, as more people switch between jobs rapidly, as more people do like contractor work, I bet you like it's more and more difficult to accurately estimate how many people have a job. Way easier when the average person with a job is like a factory worker in Michigan who's going to be in that job for 25 years, right?
Claim insurance data from the states. I don't know if the problem is at the state level or if it's at the federal level. Whatever it is, there's something not going quite as well as it used to go in terms of the ability of the BLS to gather monthly data. Here's the process, Sarah, which I'm sure you know, but maybe not every viewer knows, which is that we get it at the next month, the 15th of the month or the 12th of the month, we get it once. Then we revise it again. Then we revise it a third time.
You have an unrealistic view of how many businesses make money speculating. It's true. I am kind of flattening the whole curve here. Keep in mind that, like, right now, an unprecedented amount of our economy is being propped up by a collection of tech businesses where the money is almost entirely speculative, right? The money that's flowing into NVIDIA right now is from investors. The parts of the economy that are growing are those speculative parts. There are literally hundreds of thousands of companies operating in America that have no money in speculation, either because they're not public or because they're public, but they have a modest offering. Like they just exist on the stock market. Nothing really special is happening there, you know? But overwhelmingly, a huge percentage of the economic growth that we've seen has been in those big eight, the magnificent eight, you know, those big tech companies, Apple and Tesla and Nvidia and so on. And the speculative drive into those is what's propping up economic growth. If you took out those companies, if you ignored their gains, we would be in a recession right now. Like, we have the data. We've looked at it on stream. We'd be in a recession. This would be in a recessionary economy if it wasn't for the economic growth of those companies. And that's crazy. They sell tons of chips, though? Yeah, but that's not, like, where the money is. Like, Tesla is by far the most highly valued car company. They do not sell enough cars to justify that kind of evaluation. Like, there is not a proportional relationship between how many cars they sell and how much they're worth on the stock market. Totally different. Their worth as a speculative vessel is not the same as their worth as a company that sells goods and services. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Over time, more and more and more and more of the money that circulates in the economy has been tied to speculation. Less and less of it is down here in the real world, where people get it in wages and use it at the grocery store, and then the guy who owns the grocery store takes the money and uses it to, like, fix up the window which got broken because of the cheeky kid with the baseball, and then the contractor who fixes the window has the money and they buy groceries, so the money all circulates around and everyone's happy, you know? The more money gets pulled out of that world and into the world of speculation, of hedge funds, of bank accounts and stock assets that just sit there and accumulate value over time. Like, keep in mind, the whole point of owning a share when you speculate is to hold it until it stops growing in value, right? Like, if you buy a stock, you buy a share of a stock, you know, you want to hold on to that until you get, like, the maximal value out of it. If you buy into Tesla, this money is not circulating in the economy. You hold it because you're looking for the biggest possible payout. The lack of circulation, the lack of velocity of this money is exactly why we're in this problem. If all of the money in our economy had high velocity and circulated freely, we would be, without question, the wealthiest country in the history of the world. If America had the kind of money velocity right now that it did back in the 1950s, we would be, like, unironically living like the Jetsons. We would be living a futuristic dream world, the likes of which you could not possibly imagine. The wealth that would be available for public goods and services, for free shit, for your roads, for your trains, for everything, for free healthcare would be nothing. Free healthcare would be nothing. It would be free healthcare would be effortless. That would be like free healthcare would be up there with fluoridization of the water. It's just like an easy, oh yeah, no. Well, of course you take care of that. What are you going to make people pay for that? Come on. I might be overstating the case a little bit, but only a little bit. The point is that we have a lot of money. We have a high level of productive capacity, right? Our society is more productive than ever before. We make lots of things, and we can buy lots of things other people make. But a lot of the wealth here, it's all up there. And that's the issue we're dealing with. The money is still there.
Until the annual benchmarks come along, we revise it on a preliminary basis.
It's about having good money management. That's the difference between us and China. Yeah, there's a reason why China, despite being much poorer on average than America, even if you factor in the lower cost of wages for construction workers, can build so much more. China, just because they're better at managing their national wealth, can build highways and high-speed rail and cities out of nowhere. In 20 years, they can build a new skyline that reaches across the horizon. How? It's not just because their labor is cheaper. It's not just because their concrete is cheaper. Even after you factor in those reduced costs, they're just using their money. They're not letting it sit in a dragon's hoard on Wall Street. Not that we don't have our own infrastructure issues. I'm not claiming that China's perfect, but there is, and you're lying if you disagree with this, a difference between how much China builds and how much we build. An enormous difference, despite China having much less money than us. There's no arguing that. Yes, a lot of the stuff in China is subpar in quality compared to the stuff that we produce infrastructurally, but a lot of it isn't. Like, a lot of it is, but a lot of it isn't, you know? They use their money. Tanky arc? No, good monetary policy arc, man. That's all. Just at the bedrock of at the foundation of everything wrong with this country, it all comes back to monetary policy, okay? It's all material forces. We are never going to fix what's wrong with this country unless we address that. How the is it that we're the wealthiest country in the world, but we're like we're like $1 trillion deficit and we can't afford anything? All of our infrastructure is crumbling. It's because the money has no velocity. All of the trillions of dollars at the top up here should be pouring down and circulating, and then it gets taxed, and then it gets used on stuff, paying contractors, paying people out tax rebates, free healthcare, and then the money's back down here, and then it goes up in taxes. That's how it's supposed to be. The money goes down, everyone gets it, everyone uses it, it gets taxed. It goes down, it gets taxed, everything keeps moving. It's not supposed to sit in a dragon's hoard. Sorry.
It again. We keep counting it and keep counting it, but it looks like the counting, as was evidenced in that big June revision on the preliminary stuff, is not as good as it was, and it's not as good as it was even on a annual basis. So we seem to be having a problem here, and something needs to change. I've often thought about the idea of, can we do better getting better data from the states on a more consistent basis?
Steve, thanks for that important number. Maybe one.
It's really bad, man. It's really bad.
Breaking economic data. There are revisions to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics data for payrolls. We're expecting a drop again. Last time we saw.
By the way, to be clear, I just want to clear this up because I know a lot of you were joking, but I know a lot of you are also like genuinely stupid. Trickle-down economics is the idea that when you enrich wealthy people, poor people also are enriched because of the wealth of the wealthy people. It's factually incorrect. It's been proven wrong. It's been known to be wrong for decades. What I'm talking about is redistributive economic policies, which is the opposite, the actual direct, literal opposite. I'm talking about taking the money from wealthy people through taxes and then redistributing it through massive social investment programs, paybacks, UBI, that can then be spent freely in the economy. And if during that time period, in between big taxations, wealthy people accumulate a lot of money, that's fine, dog. Guess what happens next April? In between April 15th, 2024 and April 15th, 2025, you were able to get a startup and get 2.3 billion in speculative investment, which you were then able to get the bag off because you were the primary investor to begin with. That's great, dog. Now pay up. That's a 98% marginal tax rate for people making over $10 million a year. Yoink! And then it goes right back up to the top, and then it goes right back down. That's not trickle-down economics. That's, I don't know, waterfall economics, okay? Nothing stays up at the top.
A drop of 818,000, and wow, this time we get a bigger drop. Let's get over to Michael McKee right now, Bloomberg's international economics and policy correspondent, with the numbers. Mike?
Well, it looks like a big miss in terms of the upside. We're down 911,000 jobs from what we anticipated last year. This is through March of last year. So there were 911,000 fewer jobs in America in March of last year, and that's for the 12 months that go back from there to April of 2024. Does it mean a lot? Well, it would mean something if it really stayed that way. We do anticipate some additional changes to it before we get to the release of it in January, the final release in January.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure everything that's going on right now is going to really boost those numbers.
January, in the January employment report. What this means is about 76,000 fewer jobs.
Call it convection economics. Actually, that's a pretty good way of visualizing it, right? That literally, that is a good way of visualizing it. Like the way convection ovens work, where it's heated at the bottom and then the hot air rises, then it cools to the top and comes down. The idea is that it keeps circulating over and over. And it wouldn't work if like a bunch of cold air just stayed at the top and never moved.
A month were created in that year from April 24 to January to March of 2025. It shows the economy was
Bad
weak.
Time to quit my job last week, lol. You're a brave you're a brave son of a bitch, you know that? Who dilly?
Weaker than anticipated. We don't have a month-to-month breakdown. We do know that this is just for that 12-month period. Once we get the January final revision, then they'll break it down by month. But essentially, at this point, we're looking at a much weaker economic picture for the labor market over the last year or so.
So just looking at the market reaction, Mike, you get an S&P 500 that still remains little changed. It's
water cycle economics. Yeah, that's another great way of thinking about it. We have a finite amount of water on Earth, basically, right? It's like a finite, consistent number. But like our entire global, not just civilization, but like all life on Earth relies on the ability for that water to move around and flow freely. If something took like 90% of the fresh water on Earth away and only 10% of it was allowed to participate in the water cycle, that would probably be like bad for life on Earth, I imagine, I figure.
Basically flat, as is the NASDAQ. The real move potentially in this bond market where yields have been moving higher. Now those are also unchanged. So giving up some of those losses for at least the front end of this curve, turning into very, very slight gains. Mike, if this means that the job creation, the job growth starting last year was a lot slower, again, this is backward looking. Through March, does it change anything for the Fed here today for the decision coming in September?
No, it doesn't, because the Fed knew that we were going to have a revision, and they knew it would be large. They didn't have the exact number.
The Fed didn't know it was going to be this large. This might affect the Fed's decision making. They have to cut the rates now. The pressure is going to be too high. But I don't think cutting the rates, I don't think it's gonna lead to much job growth. It might lead to a marginal amount. Unemployment right now is 4.3%. What's underemployment? Underemployment might be quite a bit worse. We'll have to see.
But they knew that the labor market was weak. And remember, last summer, in the months leading up to the September 50 basis point rate cut, the Fed saw and said the economy, the labor market was weakening, which is why they went 50.
Stock buybacks are at a record high. Yeah, because the money's in the speculation. Of course stock buybacks are at a record high. What kind of idiot, if you have the kind of money to do a stock buyback, why the would you ever, like a dumb idiot piece of shit, try to make money selling goods and services like some kind of rube, when you could make money by using the company's money to just make the shares held by the board more valuable? Why would you ever do that? You can make way more money doing a stock buyback.
So we don't, as I mentioned earlier, have the monthly breakdown, but it does suggest that the Fed was correct in its diagnosis of the economy at the time. Now we have to figure out what does it mean going forward in this September, but we don't have any data between that would contradict.
If the Fed lowers rates, that'll just cause inflation, right? Like factoring in job loss is important, but isn't no inflation better overall? Well, you want ideally around like 1 to 2% inflation. 2% is usually the target. Right now, we're dealing with some pretty heavy inflationary forces anyway because of the tariffs, and it's going to get worse if the rates are cut. Yeah, because it makes borrowing money like really easy. It makes money less valuable overall. The cost of borrowing money goes down. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
We've got between March and now. So they're looking at what's happening now and going forward rather than what happened essentially months ago.
Oh, it's not good.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics released new data to show job growth was revised down for the year prior to March 2025. The revisions show a drop of 911,000 jobs from initial estimates. Let's bring in CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady. Kelly, thank you for joining us today. What does this data tell us about the labor market, and does it signal anything to the Fed at this point?
So a couple of things. One, that 911,000 number, these job revisions are not out of the ordinary, but it is quite significant. And
hold on. The revisions themselves aren't out of the ordinary. The size of the revision is historic.
I want to emphasize that this period where those revisions are said to have taken place, it's April 2024 through March of 2025. So roughly 10 months under the previous administration and the rest under the current administration. And what this tells us businesses, the Fed, is that that weakening in the labor market that we have been talking about a lot of late, especially after that jobs report on Friday that came out, is that this weakening has been happening for longer than we realized. And if you break down the 12 months and you look at these revisions, it actually tells you the U.S. economy added on average just about 76,000 jobs a month. That is much lower than was originally expected. Some of those months when we reported on them going back to almost a year ago, you were looking at over 100,000 jobs added. Yeah. So two things I want to underscore. One, this does tell the Fed, okay, interest rate cut, yes, let's do that.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of investors saying
more honest here than the last one we looked at.
That this would argue you need a 0.5 point rate cut.
Here we go. Blame Biden arc. Buddy, this economic leviathan that we're dealing with is 100% just on Biden as well. Like, it's not just on Trump. It's 100% all of them. Like, Obama is hugely responsible. The whole quantitative easing bullshit, the fact that he didn't punish Wall Street, this is not a Trump-specific thing. The Trump-specific thing is the tariffs. Everything, like all of the inflationary pressure being brought about by the tariffs, that is a Trump special. But yeah, the fact that the entire economy is stonks now and not actually like money moving around freely, that is a broader problem.
Not just a quarter point. But to sort of temper some of those expectations, I want to highlight that this has already happened. This is a backward-looking report. So yes, the economy added less jobs than we originally thought, to the tune of almost 1 million jobs. However, that's already baked in. We didn't.
Yeah, but like, that's really bad. That's really bad. 1 million fewer people are employed than we thought. That's a lot of people. There are plenty of states that have less than 1 million people in population. Imagine if you just found out one day that the entirety of South Dakota was actually unemployed when you previously thought everyone there was employed.
Go into a recession. So I think when we see this big number, I just want people to realize this is something we've already been living through. This is the current economy, and this is a backward-looking report that just provides some context.
Yeah, and very important context to provide there.
Yeah, it's basically like a 0.5, 0.6% increase to inflation, because you don't count under 18s or the retired.
So I want to ask you now about tariffs, because Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he basically says that U.S. would have to issue refunds if the Supreme Court rules against Trump's imposed.
That's another topic. And it's in like every sector, too. Hospitality, wholesale trade, retail, manufacturing, information, other services. Sheesh. Mining and logging only went down by a little bit, but there were only so many people there. It looks like by percentage, the biggest hit was information. Information and wholesale trade. Is this not available by month? Jesus, how detailed do you think the data is? It's difficult enough to get these numbers, you know? Well, anyway, yeah, I don't know. The economy is even more dead than we thought. Is leisure and hospitality not the highest? We're talking about percentages. Do you think this will affect the gig economy? In the sense that, like, more people will rely on it? Maybe. God, look at that. The employment situation. Unemployment is creeping upwards. Non-farm payroll employment over the month change. And then right here, once the tariffs kick in, kerplunk. But now it's even worse. Now it's even worse. How opposed are you to the stock market? Are you against the principles of it as well? Yeah, I've pretty much been radicalized into like an obscene, like Old Testament era anti-indebtment position, basically. Like I basically am against loaning as a concept now. It seems like it seems like if you allow people to borrow money and charge interest at it, you set in motion a bunch of dominoes that 4,000 years later will lead to the entire economy being an infinity trillion-dollar single share of one economy's stock, or sorry, of one company's stock, and the rest of us have to play around with like 50 cents to trade for laundry and groceries and stuff. It's just the mathematics on it don't work out. I don't believe in this. What's the alternative? Not having loans or anything like that. Yay, let's abolish usury. No, you're misunderstanding. I didn't say no usury. I didn't say no interest. I said no loans, motherfucker. The interest isn't even the thing that matters. After all, the thing that we're most concerned about, which is that, you know, the economy is going to go haywire when the Fed lowers the interest rate because borrowing money becomes essentially free. If there's no usury, borrowing money is always free. Like, getting rid of interest then would only unlock the final form of this economic accumulation where everyone can just loan out money for fares, free money all the time. Like, that wouldn't fix anything. But would we have grants? Grants aren't loans. Loans are loans. People use those for college. I'm sure you can imagine a world without college loans. Like, obviously, I want college to be free. Like, you're asking, like, if I'm saying something like there should be no loans, obviously, we're talking about a world that is different enough where you would also not have paid college. Or, Jesus, a grant? Why do banks loan money with low interest to corporations when inflation means they're losing money when it's paid back? Well, they're not quite losing money when it's paid back. The rate of lending it out is still lower, or sorry, is still higher than what inflation would devalue the currency for, but also it's really complicated.